Okay, so what I'd like to follow in this presentation is just go through 4 or 5 slides that will position the product and explain a little bit about what the product does from a methodology as well as a technological point of view. Then we'll go into a quick little demonstration of what the program does, and then open it up to any questions that you may have at the end. In addition to that, if you want to do more of a deep dive or more of a personal demonstration, please feel free to reach out to Laurie or to Mary at Socius, and they will organize an individual one-on-one demonstration with me. Okay, so let's get started with some of the slides. As I mentioned, there's just about 4 or 5 of them. So what is Sage Inventory Advisor? It's an affordable cloud-based solution that will integrate with your Sage ERP, and that will be Sage 100, Sage 300, Sage 500, and X3. To help you optimize your inventory in the following 3 ways. Firstly, decrease your working capital by scientifically calculating the appropriate investment in safety stock based on the individual item's risk profile. Every item is unique in the sense that it has its own risk associated with it in terms of stocking out. You know, we don't know when the customer is going to buy from us, and we don't know when the supplier is going to deliver. And because of those unknowns, there is the risk of stocking out. So we need to calculate what the best amount of safety stock we should be holding to help decrease working capital as well as prevent us from stocking out. We help improve customer service by having a system that alerts us to which items need my attention and to take the necessary actions timelessly to prevent those stockouts from happening. The third one is very important from a time-saving point of view. Some of you might be using spreadsheets on the side to do your planning and your forecasting and the calculation of min-max levels. And what we want to do with Inventory Advisor is do away with all those spreadsheets and save you time by having a system do that for you automatically. You know, what we're wanting to do with Inventory Advisor is separate the tasks of what is calculation and what is decision making. Computers are very good at making calculations, and people are very good at making decisions. So we want to separate those 2 tasks out and thus make us much more efficient in what we're doing. And that's free up a lot of our time so that we can spend time doing other tasks that we are needed for doing during the day. I just want to go through the fee structure quickly so that we're not wondering how much this costs while we're going through the presentation. And then we'll cover it in a little bit more detail at the end of the presentation. But there are 2 fees. The one is a monthly fee. This is an ongoing service, and so it's an ongoing monthly fee that is charged. That fee provides for a limited number of users, and it's a no long-term contract. So we're not asking you to sign up for annual maintenance agreements or annual contracts of any kind. It starts at $2.99 a month, which goes up to 5,000 SKUs that we want to manage. The next tier is $3.99, which takes you up to 25,000 SKUs. But as I mentioned, I'll go through a little bit more detail later. There is a one-time initiation fee. This encompasses the connection, the installation of the program, the setup, which is how to make the software emulate your business environment. There is 4 or 5 hours worth of online training that you can register for on Sage University. That's included in the price. And then there's of course the ongoing support in order to answer any questions that you may have as you get to know the program and get more familiar with it. And that starts at $2,200. So those are the numbers we're talking about, and we'll go through that later. Now, to position the product in terms of inventory management, on the one side, we've got inventory control. This is your ERP system. It manages the physical product. So whenever we receive a product, we need to take note of that. Where we store it in our binning, the counting, the labeling of the product. That's the inventory control side. Then you've got inventory replenishment, which deals with the forecasting, the ordering, and the expediting of your product to ensure that we've got the right stock in the right place at the right time. And that is what Inventory Advisor is all about. So we make the assumption that you've got an accurate inventory control system in place in order to feed the information across to Sage Inventory Advisor to do the necessary inventory replenishment decisions that we need. Second last slide, if we ask the question, what is Sage Inventory Advisor primarily designed to do? Well, then there are two questions that it's designed to address. The first is, what needs my attention today? So we want a system that's immediately going to show us which items do I need to take action on today. And when I talk about that action, I'm talking about 4 statuses. I want the system to tell me which products are currently out of stock, which products are potentially going to run out of stock, maybe a lead time or a forecast has changed since I last placed an order, and I want to be notified of any potential problem that I could have with this item in terms of stocking out. I want the system to tell me which of my products are in excess so that I can take the necessary actions to reduce that excess. And then finally, I wanted to look at my open order pipeline, my open purchase order pipeline, and tell me which one of those purchase orders are going to create excess if I let them arrive. So maybe if there's enough time that I can cancel or delay those orders with the supplier for a later time, because I just don't want them to come in right now and create additional excess for me. The second side, or the second question that the system's designed to address is, what do I need to order? What's the optimum quantity that I need to order today to help me reach my goal of optimizing my inventory? Now, in order to address those two questions, we need to feed the system with 3 main inputs. And I'll refer back to these inputs during the demonstration. But the first one is product importance. I want to know, of my range of products, which ones should I stock and which ones shouldn't I stock? And then the ones that I do stock, which ones are more important and which ones are less important to my business? And we do that by analyzing the stocked items in 2 ways. We look at your sales contribution based on the value of movement or the value of sales, and then we categorize them into A, B, and C categories, where A's represent, let's say, the top 80% of that value of movement, the B's and C's the remaining 20%. So you end up with a Pareto type breakdown where A's are much more important than B's and B's are much more important than C's. Now, because your product range, very often companies have quite a diverse range in cost prices. So you've got items that are fast-moving, low-value items, such as nuts and washers, for example, and you've got products that are slow-moving but very expensive. Maybe, in an auto parts store, it might be an engine or a gearbox. Now, if you think about, if we analyze purely based on value, then those nuts and washers, where we sell maybe 1,000 a month, but they cost 1 cent each, they get totally dominated by a product like an engine, for example, where if we sell 1 or 2 a month, but they cost $3,000 or $4,000 each. But those nuts and washers are just as important to our business, and we need to make sure that they are assigned appropriately. So to help with that to help those nuts and washer type items, we also analyze based on the quantity of the sales movement. And here we categorize them into high, medium, and low, where your highs represent the top 80%, for example, and are thus therefore much more important than the mediums, and the mediums are much more important than the lows. So what you end up with then for our stocked items is a 3x3 matrix where each block represents a certain level of importance. Within each block you can see the number of items that were identified that belong to that category, the value of inventory, the average sales demand per month, and then the fill rate that we're achieving. So these items in the top right-hand corner, your high quantity movers as well as your high value movers, these are your bread and butter items. These are the ones that the system has identified are the ones that generate the most amount of revenue, maybe the most amount of margin, etc. And it's therefore critical that we do not run out of these items. So wherever we see the matrix or this item identified in the system, based on the color and the and the category that it's in, we immediately are notified to how important the item is to my business. On the opposite end of the scale, we've got these items here in the bottom left. C, value movers, low quantity movers. We can see we've got thousands of those. We've got $1.2 million worth of inventory, but we are only selling $65,000 a month. So clearly, on the opposite end of the scale, these are your slow-moving items. So what do we want to do with these items? Should we maybe reclassify them as non-stocked? We may be keeping them because of strategic reasons, or we've got a contract with a supplier to keep a certain amount on hand, but these items are not contributing much to the business, so maybe we should think about reclassifying them at some point. So you can see that each block within the matrix gives me an indication of how important the item is. Now I want to move to the second input, which is a rules engine where we feed it a certain number of parameters. So for example, what kind of service level do we want to provide to the customer? What are when we buy the product, how much do we buy at a time? Those are some of the parameters that we feed into this rules engine to determine the level of investment that we need to put into the business to meet those levels of service that we want to provide our customer. And then finally, the third input is a forecast that tells us what we think we're going to sell. So Inventory Advisor has a powerful forecasting engine that's got about 15 different algorithms, and these algorithms will pick up seasonal profiles or seasonal characteristics. They'll pick up linear increasing or decreasing trends. They'll pick up outliers that don't repeat themselves and therefore normalize those sales. And it will therefore predict for the next 12 months what it thinks you're going to sell. Now, in addition to that, you might be getting a new customer on board. You might have a promotion in the next couple of months, and you need the ability to go in and overwrite those forecasts with what you think is going to be sold based on that promotion or that new customer. So the forecasting engine will provide both automated forecasts as well as allow you to go and make changes to those forecasts going forward. So this slide gives you a really nice summary of what the tool is designed to do and what is needed in order to provide inputs to reach those outputs. So please remember this slide. I'm going to refer back to it once or twice during the demonstration. The last slide just gives us a quick view of how the program, how the technology works. Sage Inventory Advisor is a cloud-based program, which means that your data is transferred off-site and is hosted on our servers in Chicago. And it does that by, we install a small connection program on your server, and it extracts the necessary inventory data that we need. So sales information, stock on hand, warehouse and supplier listings, open purchase order and sales orders. And then if you've got some manufacturing, it'll bring in the bill of material as well. That information is scheduled to transfer on a nightly basis, say 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And depending on the number of items you have, but anything up to say 10 to 15,000 items will process in 20 to 25 minutes. And as soon as that processing is finished, you are able to then access the program via an internet browser and an internet connection. So whether you've got an iPad, an iPhone, a laptop, as long as you're connected to the internet and you have a browser, you are able to access this program. Whether you're anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, as long as you have those two, you can reach out, you can see the program. So there's no need to invest in additional hardware or additional software, which are often very expensive outlays in order to install these kind of programs. This is all included as long as you've got an internet browser and connectivity. So very simple setup, and the next step is then to go and have a look and see what the program looks like. Okay. So what you're looking at here is our landing page. It's the first page you see when you log into the system. You've gone to a URL at the top of the screen that dictates your company's name, sageinventoryadvisor.net. It takes you to a username, login, and password, and this is the first page that you see. Now, when we designed Inventory Advisor, we wanted it to be user-friendly. We wanted it to be intuitive, and therefore we modeled it around something that we are all very familiar with and know at the moment, and that's your typical web page. If you go to a company's web page, you'll see these tabs at the top of the screen, and they talk about the company, the products we sell, contact us information. And so everything within Sage Inventory Advisor is also operated from these tabs that you see at the top of the screen. The dashboard you're looking at now is found by hovering over the dashboard tab and selecting the location or warehouse that I'm interested in analyzing. In this case, I've got a company that's got Chicago as the central warehouse, and that supports 2 branches, Detroit and New York. I also have Los Angeles, which is an independent warehouse. It does its own purchasing. In addition to that, I've got national consolidation functionality. So I've got the ability to create a virtual warehouse, which is a total of the 4 warehouses below it. So I may want to look at my company as a whole, and so I have that ability to do that by selecting that particular warehouse. So what I'm going to do is I want to go and select the dashboard for the Los Angeles location. So I would select that, and it would load the dashboard for my Los Angeles warehouse. Now the dashboard deals primarily with that first question on that slide. If you think back to that slide that I asked you to remember and the 2 questions that Inventory Advisor was designed to address, the first question was, which items need my attention today? And the dashboard is what is the screen that provides you with that information. It's broken up into 2 main areas. The first is, or are these graphs that you see at the top of the screen. So we've identified over the years 6 key performance indicators for the purposes of inventory replenishment. The first 2 relate to the problem that we as inventory managers have, and that is, how do we optimize our inventory, which typically involves reducing it, while maintaining the level of fill rate or the level of service that we want to achieve. Each one of these little blue bars represents a daily measurement, with the red bar being the most current or last night's measurement. So you get a good idea of whether we are trending towards improvement or not. The next 4 graphs relate to what needs my attention today. So here we've got excess items. Here we've got our order pipeline and which one of those orders are going to result in surplus or excess. Here we've got the items where we are currently out of stock, and then those items where we potentially could run out of stock. And each one of these graphs shows you the number of items that have been identified belonging to that status, as well as the value associated with that. So in the case of this stockout graph, 941 items identified, and we are going to be losing sales to the value of $710,000. Now, these graphs give us an overall perspective of the warehouse. What I want to now do is identify the items that are causing the problem. So instead of looking at all 941 items, what we do is we rank those items in descending order of lost sales value, so that the worst items are at the top, and we display the top 5 in these little lists at the bottom here. So here you've got the top 5 stockouts. To the left, we've got the top 5 surplus order items, and to the right, we've got the top 5 potential stockout items. Now, what's quite interesting, which we often find when we start with a customer, is that here we've got $710,000 of lost sales across 941 items. If I just look at the top 5 items, I can see that $195,000 represents 25% of my total problem. So we're saying that let's not manage all 941 items. Let's try and manage by exception, but let's be intelligent in the way that we manage those exceptions. So by displaying it in descending order, we can see that by just managing these top 5 items, we're dealing with 25% of the total problem immediately. So the whole objective of the screen is to indicate to you what the warehouse, what situation the warehouse is in at the moment, but then also show you which items you should be dealing with today. And the whole objective is to have these items removed from the list. So what I want to do is I want to understand, why is the item on the list in the first place? Maybe it's a purchase order that I haven't closed. Maybe it's a wrong lead time I'm using. Maybe it's a forecast that needs an adjustment. I need to understand why the item is on the list, and then take the necessary action to remove it from the list. Now you'll notice that there's some items have a little comment bubble next to it. So I can go and enter a comment which may dictate, which may be the action that I'm taking on this particular item, so that if I've got multiple users, they can all see what action I'm taking on this particular item to remove it from the list. And then I've also got these little colored blocks beside each item code, which relate back to the matrix that I spoke about earlier. The first character refers to the A, B, and C classification, and the second character, the high, medium, and low classification, which was based on the quantity of movement. And then the color of the block gives me a further indication of where it's positioned on the matrix, and so I know how important it is. If I want to see more items than just these top 5, I can click on this full report option here, and that will generate the remaining 940 items very quickly for me, and I can scroll to the bottom of the screen and print it out or send it out to an Excel spreadsheet for further analysis if I need to. So from that screen, you can see that the information as to what items need my attention is very accessible, very easy to get to, and it's immediately available as soon as I log into the program. Now I want to move on to the second question that the system is designed to address, and that is, how do I generate an order on the parts? So all I need to do is go to my ordering tab. What this brings up is any open orders or orders that I may have created this morning that I'm still reviewing, or I want to go and create a new order. So I'm going to click on New Order, and I'm going to select my Chicago Central Warehouse, which is where I typically do my buying on my external suppliers. And what this generates is a summary list of the suppliers that I need to order on today only. I don't need to see a full list of my suppliers, just the suppliers that I want to order today. What it's showing me is the supplier name. Do I have any open customer orders associated with the items belonging to the supplier? Do I have any open purchase orders currently with the supplier? And then under recommended orders, how many products should I be ordering from the supplier today, and what's the total quantity and order value for that particular order? So as a buyer, for example, I may rank on value, rank again, so that my highest order value is at the top of the list, and this is the supplier that I'm going to go and order on today. So Consolidated Tire Company, there are 10 items that I should be ordering to the value of $4.7 million. So I would select the supplier and click on Create Order. What this generates is our detailed order schedule. It's the 10 items, and what we wanted to achieve with the screen is provide you with all the information that you need on one screen so that you can make an informed decision before committing this order with the supplier. And in order to make that informed decision, we need to be able to review the inputs to the recommended quantity that the system is recommending. So on the right half of the ordering schedule, we've got the 3 inputs. There you've got your classification. So immediately I see its position on the matrix and know how important the item is, as well as the status of the item, which may dictate that I fly the product in instead of ship it in as I normally do, or maybe I go down to down the road to the competitor and buy it from them. The second piece input is the rules engine and the parameters that I'm feeding it. So is my lead time correct at 90 days? My safety stock measurement that the system has calculated, the replenishment cycle, which is, am I buying this product on a 3-day cycle or not? Then I've got my on-hand quantity, what do I currently have on hand? And if I've got multiple warehouses in my business spread out across the country, I can click on that, and it will quickly bring up a list of where else in the company do I have the stock and what the status of that particular item is. If, for example, I had excess in Detroit, then maybe instead of buying this from a supplier, can I not transfer some across from Detroit, which may help me balance my inventory in throughout my company. I can see what I've got on order of this particular product at the moment. There's some details of any open purchase orders. And then finally, I can look at the sales and forecast information. So the blue represents the sales and the brown information, And if I hover over the graph, it brings up a table showing me the numbers behind the graph to give me a sense of scale. So in this case, my top row represents the last 12 months of sales. The F row represents the next 12 months of forecast. And the W row represents any branch demand that I may be supporting as a result of my central warehouse or central buying setup that I've got going here. So all this demand is taken into consideration along with the policy information and the classification to determine the recommended order quantity on the left. So in this case, the system is recommending we buy 1,125 units. Each unit costs $203, which gives me a total order value of $228. Do I have any, it shows me what my total order volume is as well as my total order weight. And that's useful when the suppliers impose some sort of ordering constraint on me, which I'll talk about shortly. And then if I order it based on this 90-day lead time, this is when it will arrive. Now, I mentioned earlier the ordering constraints that the suppliers may impose on us. If you go down to the bottom of right hand of the screen, we've got a little summary of this total order. There you can see number of items, 10, total order units, total order value, order volume, and weight, etc. So let's say, for example, we need to fill a 30,000 cubic foot container before the supplier will ship it to us. It may also be a weight constraint in order to get free shipping or to get a price break from the supplier. In this case, we're not quite meeting our 30,000 square foot or cubic foot container. We're at 29,000. So what that means is that I'm going to have to increase these recommended order quantities. Now, if I'm going to do that, I would rather do it on faster moving product than on slower moving product. So I would click on classification to rank all my faster moving products at the top of the screen, as I've done here. And I would then go across the left and say, well, instead of ordering 778, I'm going to order 900. And you'll notice that as I enter that information, this table at the bottom here is keeping track of any changes that I'm making. So I haven't quite met my 30,000 cubic foot container yet. So I'm going to go over here and say, instead of 1,125, I'm going to buy 1,250. And there we go. Now I've just reached my 30,000 foot constraint, so I can now go ahead and place this order with the supplier. Now the next step is to then create this order within your ERP system. And we don't want you to go and do that manually. Go into purchase order entry and start manually capturing these orders. So what we do is we download this information that you've been reviewing and making any adjustments to. We download it in a file, and it sends that file back down to your ERP system automatically. And we then use the data import tool within your ERP system. Sage 100, it's the virtual integrator. Sage 300, it's a macro. Sage 500, it's the data import tool. Similar thing for X3. And that import tool would then take this file and automatically create the purchase order within your ERP system. And that job has been written for us already, so there's no need to, we just install it and it automatically imports the orders for us. So that summarizes, that brings conclusion, the summary of what the system is primarily designed to do. We looked at the dashboard and we saw what items need our attention, and here we quickly saw how easy it was to generate an order for the system. Now I just want to jump into a little bit extra functionality that the system offers, and that is I want to know why the item appeared on the dashboard. As I mentioned earlier, we need to understand why it appeared on the dashboard so I can take the necessary action. And I may also want to know how did the system come up with this order quantity. So to do that, I need to drill into the item. So wherever I see the item code, I simply click on it, and it drills into our stock inquiry tab, one of the tabs that you see at the top of the screen. This is very similar to your item maintenance screen, for example, in Sage 100, where it provides you all the information about the item from an inventory replenishment point of view. On the left-hand side, we've got the details. So there we can see cost prices, on hand, minimum order quantities. There's the matrix and the item's position. Here we've got the supplier information and the details associated with the item. On the right, we've got the forecasting information. There's the algorithm that was chosen that best fits this item. And again, we can hover over it and it'll bring up that table that we saw earlier. Down here in the bottom right, we've got the 5 parameters that feed that rules engine that determines how much safety stock we should be holding for this particular item. That information all goes into the center panel where the system now calculates the recommended order as well as the potential status of the status of this item. And it does that by saying, well, what am I going to consume over my 90-day lead time, 842 units. I add to that my safety stock level, which I got from down here. That gives me my reorder point, or my minimum level. We add to that minimum level the replenishment cycle, which is how much do we buy at a time. So here we're buying 30 days worth at a time. And that gives me my order up to level, or the maximum level. So what's happening here is that the system is calculating automatically for every single item across every single warehouse every single day. It's recalculating what the optimum reorder and order up to levels should be for this particular item. Those levels are then compared with your current stocking situation. There's 87 on hand, we've got 15 on back order, we've got 84 on purchase order at the moment, open purchase orders. That gives us a net stock figure of 156. Clearly we are way below the reorder level, which triggers an order. How much do we order? Well, we order up to the maximum, and that's where the recommended order quantity comes from. And that's the number that you saw in the ordering report earlier. And then below that, it's showing me what the status of this item is. Clearly, based on the 87 on hand and only 84 coming in on purchase order, the 90-day lead time, we are clearly going to stock out of this item if we don't take some sort of emergency action on for this particular item. So a very useful screen for understanding why the item is on the dashboard and why is it coming up for recommended order. It gives you all the answers you need. I wanted to scroll down a little bit on the screen to show you a forecasting functionality. So here we've got some extra tabs. I'm on the forecasting tab. Here I can see the items 2 years worth of sales history, or however many years we've brought in. And then in orange I can see what the system has generated as a forecast. Below that I can see the graphical representation of those numbers. Blue represents sales and the brown represents the forecast. Now let's say I want to go and change this forecast because a customer is coming on board or I've got a promotion in the future. To change a forecast, I simply go to Amend Forecast. Brings up a similar looking screen where I can see my sales history, the computer-generated forecast, and the manual forecast. Now here, this is where I would make my change. So instead of 176 in April, I'm going to sell 300. And as I enter that information, you'll see the graph changes straight away. I can make multiple changes to, or a single change to multiple months at the same time. I can highlight those first 9 months and say instead of I'm going to sell 80 for each of those months, it'll copy 80 into each month. Or if there is a seasonal profile, the algorithm identified some sort of seasonality, and I want to preserve that profile but just increase everything by 20%, for example, then I can use this little sliding scale and do that. So there you see for the first 9 months that I highlighted, it's preserving the profile by increasing every month by a set percentage. So I'm going to increase everything by 30%. Once I'm happy with that, I apply the new forecast. Now you see that with, it literally took me 10, 15 seconds to make a change to the forecast once I'm familiar with how the system works. And those new forecasts are now, we bounce back to the stock inquiry page with the new the reorder point and the order up to levels, as well as the recommended order, has now been adjusted according to that new forecast that I've entered into the system. Scrolling down again to the bottom of the page, some of these extra tabs, and there we've got forecast shots. So we're keeping track of the item's forecast history to calculate the forecast risk that I mentioned earlier, because we don't know what the customer is going to buy from us. So we need to keep track of forecast history as well as sales to make sure to calculate a variance by month so that we can calculate the forecast risk. We can show you your open purchase orders and the detail behind that information. Supplier performance. I mentioned earlier that one of the other risks associated with an item is its supplier performance. So we download 12 months worth of closed purchase orders, and from that we measure the lead time as well as the supplier performance to calculate the supply risk. And if I just scroll to the top of the screen a little bit, there you can see the supply risk that is used in the calculation of safety stock. And then it graphically represents that information for you. It shows us our sales orders that we have open with customers. I'm going to come back to the bill of material. We've got central warehouse. So as I mentioned earlier, I've got Chicago as my central buying facility, and this is the demand that's coming through by month from my Detroit and New York branches that I have open at the moment. Then we've got a projection tab, which gives us an idea of how the item is going to perform for the next 12 months, because what the system does is it calculates those min-max levels for every single day, which is represented by the gray area. And so it gives us an indication of how long the item is going to be in a stock-out situation before today's order finally arrives, and then it tries to maintain us in an optimal level, which is represented by that gray range ahead. So the projection gives us a good idea of how long the item is going to be in excess, or how long it's going to be in surplus order, or deficit, or whatever, so that we can take appropriate actions if necessary. And then finally, one can enter a comment, as I mentioned earlier, against the particular item so that other users are notified of any actions that I'm taking. And then finally, the bill of material. I'm just going to go to an item where I know I have a bill of material. So I'm going back to my Chicago warehouse dashboard, and I'm going to select this item over here, which I know has a bill of material. Now you'll notice that the bill of material tab now has a little asterisk against it, which indicates that this item belongs to a bill of material. And I mentioned earlier that one of the files that we download is your bill of material file. It contains your finished goods, your components, and the ratio of components to finished goods. We resolve that file into a graphical interface that looks something like this. So here you've got your 3 finished goods, and we are currently positioned on the ST9501 item. So it's the family tree. This is the bill of material family tree associated with this item. So it's all the uncles and aunts and cousins and nephews and all that sort of thing associated with this particular item. And I can see that this item goes into 3 finished good items. And if I hover over the link, it shows me the ratio of components needed. And then I can see all the remaining items in this bill of material tree. Along with that, I can also go and see what the demand coming through from those 3 finished goods are. There's the demand by month. So I can generate potential work orders from this information. And so what the bill of material does is it's a constraint-free bill of material, very similar to your Sage 100 bill of material, where it considers the lead time and the quantity coming from finished goods to determine how much and when of the components we need to buy. So by that I'm saying it's a constraint-free bill of material. So it's not looking at supplier at warehouse capacity or machine capacities or constraints. It's simply looking at what do I need at the finished good level, how long does it take me to manufacture that finished good, and how long does it take me to procure the raw materials to then tell me how much and when of those components I need to buy. And that's then what you see on the ordering schedule that I showed you earlier. It comes up. So what this that sort of brings to a conclusion the demonstration of the product. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with too much information, but I think I've given you a good representation of what the system is, what the system looks like, and what it's capable of doing. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to see a more detailed deep dive into the product, we're more than happy to set up a personal presentation and demonstration with you. Just one or two more slides to cover, and that is the pricing. The monthly fee provides for an unlimited number of registered users. The fees are due monthly in advance with a 5-day notice after initial 4 months. So what we're saying is we want you to commit to the program for at least the first 4 months. Thereafter, you can provide a 5-day notice and cancel the program or the service if you feel that you're not getting value for money. The monthly fee is based on the number of SKUs that we are going to manage in total. So for example, if you've got 3 locations or 3 warehouses and each one is managing 2,000 items, you've got a total of 6,000 stock keeping units by location. And that's the number that we use to base the monthly service on. So up to 5,000 SKUs is $299. Up to 25,000 SKUs is $399. And then there's the once-off initiation fee, which starts at $2,200 up to 25,000 SKUs, which includes the installation, standard customizations, online training, and support. And then the final slide is the implementation. How long does it take to implement this program? Once we've received the order confirmation from Sage, we will reach out to you in the first 48 hours, and we'll set up a time where we can remote into your server along with your IT staff, and literally within an hour or two, we will be able to have the program installed so that you can access it as I demonstrated it to you now. How that data looks, we're not sure at this point, and that's why we then ask you to go through a data validation exercise, and which may require some data cleanup on your side. Maybe some lead times need to be entered or minimum order quantities need to be captured. But we will indicate to you, along with your partner, what information needs to be updated. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we would ask you to go through some online training with Sage University, which covers the methodology as well as the navigation through the tool, and that is about 4 or 5 hours. And you are free to go through that in 1 day, or you can go through it in 3 weeks. The online training material keeps track of where you are and guides you through that online training. And then, of course, we're always available to answer any question and answers during that time and beyond. But the implementation is very quick, so literally within an hour or two you're up and running, and then over the next 2 or 3 weeks you get to know the system and do data cleanups and that sort of thing. So we're talking about, we're not talking about, weeks of installation or months of installation. It's very quick to get a program like this up and running and installed. So with that, I would like to conclude the demonstration and open it up to any questions that you may have.